Hey guys, it's Faye from Solar Flow and I am back with another video. Today's topic is a deep dive behind the veil energy read on narcissism and empaths. So if this sounds good to you, please stick around, and if not, I'll catch you at another video. So first and foremost, this video is meant to be a companion video to last week's video, which was an interview with a gentleman by the name of HG Tudor. Now, HG is a self-aware narcissistic psychopath. So that means he knows who he is, and he understands, therefore, the way in which narcissists view the world, view other people, function within the world, and the dynamic that they have with empaths. So that is the three-dimensional explanation for the interplay between a narcissist and an empath. This video is the behind the veil energy read of these two types of people. And it's the things that we cannot see, but are the explanations, perhaps first and foremost, in the origin point of these personalities, why they come into their particular incarnations, and the dynamic between the two of them. Okay? So with that in mind, we're going to dive in. So where does the term narcissist come from? Narcissist comes from a mythological Greek character by the name Narcissus. And as this tale goes, Narcissus was walking by some water and he caught the reflection of himself and was so completely mesmerized by his beauty that he could not tear himself away from the water, and therefore his physical body wilted away and died. So Narcissus was very overly attached to the three-dimensional version of himself, and that is what led to his demise. So narcissist comes from narcissus. And I thought that was really interesting. And I kind of wondered if the behind the veil analysis and energy portion of this actually had to do with an over-identification of the three-dimensional. And this is what I discovered. And yes, I do have notes. I will be referring to them because a lot of information came in and I want to make sure that I don't leave anything out. But what was shown to me as what narcissists, what a narcissist is, or where it comes from, it is where there is it is truly an over-attachment to the 3D interpretation of themselves. So it is therefore a person that is lacking balance. It is perhaps somebody that was not only self-identifying with their physical beauty in a previous incarnation, but it could have also have been somebody that was overly attached to anything of a three-dimensional nature. So they were too overly attached to power. They were too overly attached to their reputation, too overly attached to the so-called three-dimensional versions of success. What car they drove, how much money was in their bank account, how many degrees they had that proclaimed them to be so successful in their nature. It could have even been somebody that was completely losing touch with their true self. So it's somebody that doesn't have any soul identification with the divine in any way, shape, or form. So narcissism is a course correction from previous incarnations where the soul was overly attached to their sense of self and their ego. So it's somebody that was too egocentric and lacked balance. And the ego is only a three-dimensional construct. So if it's a narcissist is truly anybody that was completely trapped in the matrix and in the three-dimensional in previous incarnations. And they have therefore come back in this incarnation egoless. I'm going to get to that. I'm going to explain it. And this was actually shown to me, the way a narcissist is, as a series of funhouse mirrors. Now, for anyone who's not familiar with what a fun house is, you'll sometimes kind of like see a fun house at like a summer festival. It's where you'll have like those small little roller coasters or a Ferris wheel. And then there's probably going to be like a little standalone, it could be like a tent or something like that. And inside of it are a series of mirrors. And the mirrors are all shaped in a different way that it is distorting the reality of the person that is looking in the mirror. So for example, one mirror could make a person appear to be very, very tall and very, very skinny. Another mirror could make the person appear to be very, very large and like shaped like a ball. Another one could be a series of like cuts that will just completely distort the person's physical body altogether. But that is designed that way when the person is looking at the reflection, they'll get a good laugh because they understand that it's a distortion of themselves. But the way narcissism was shown to me was that it's a series of mirrors reflecting nothing. There is no person standing there. It's literally all smoke and mirrors. It's a reflection bouncing off of other mirrors, mixed in with this smoke as a distraction, but there's nothing there. It's not even a distortion of a physical body. It's a reflection of nothingness. And that is the essence of what a narcissist is in this incarnation. So one could say it is the quintessential way that we would perhaps view one particular kind of a narcissist, where it's the over-attachment to them looking in the mirror. But imagine the person looking in the mirror doesn't even exist. It's a reflection of pure nothingness. So it is where the person has come back to course correct because they have been too overly attached to the 3D in previous incarnations, and they have been too egocentric in previous incarnations that they have come back as a narcissist, where the narcissist has no true self and has therefore no ego. So what they have devised is something called a construct of a false self. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Now, what is the false self? So let's say, I'm going to give an example. This is, of course, not to explain the full essence of how one can become a narcissist, but this is perhaps one of the ways in which one can become a narcissist, which is, let's say something has happened to this person when they were in their formative years. Perhaps it was sexual abuse. And they are so filled with shame because of the sexual abuse that they have endured that they have cut themselves off completely from who this has happened to. And instead, they have constructed a so-called false self that this thing did not happen to. So look at it like this. Let's say you have two completely identical plants, and you want to do an experiment. Plant A on the left, you're not going to water. Plant B on the right, not only are you going to water it, but you're going to give it positive affirmations. You're going to tell that plant, oh, you're the best, you're the greatest, you're the smartest, you're the prettiest. It doesn't take a genius to know the plant that is not watered will die. That is what happens to the ego, the identity of the narcissist. They have abandoned themselves because of perhaps this deep shameful experience that they have endured in their formative years. And a way of abdicating the identification to it is to let that version of themselves die and to hop identities to the false construct of a false self, because this false self didn't have this traumatic experience happen to them. So their true soul essence, their true identity of who they are, has withered away and died because they're wearing, if you will, a facade. So the soul has come back into this life to seek balance. And they have come back this time without any sense of self or real identity. And that the absence of the self and the fabrication of the false self is truly smoke and mirrors. And this is so that they can experience the duality of both extremes, and that they can recognize that both can cause harm. Because here's why. Let's say the version of themselves in previous incarnations where they overly identified with everything of a three-dimensional nature. So they either overly identified with the way that they looked, and then other parts of themselves would wither away. Just like with narcissists, right? They're so beautiful, they don't have to study. They're so beautiful, they don't have to eat. They're so beautiful, so they're going to end up being underdeveloped because of that, because they're fixated only on their three-dimensional beauty. Now, let's say it's somebody that is only focusing on the money in their bank account. They're so focused on the accumulation of three-dimensional wealth that they have completely abdicated their responsibility to their community or to their family or to their spiritual practice. It's somebody that is so fixated perhaps with the accumulation of their intelligence that all they want is to acquire degree after degree after degree, because they will not feel complete within themselves unless they have all of the physical expressions of their so-called intelligence. So that is a person that has completely, again, abdicated their sense of self due to the external. So those are the souls that are coming back as a narcissist, because narcissists do not have a core sense of self. They are egoless. So just like you can have the person that is overly identifying with the 3D and they are therefore neglecting everything else as a result of it, you can also have the person that is egoless, the narcissist, and that due to their narcissism and their complete lack of emotional empathy, they will then be the perpetrators of narcissistic abuse. Because again, they lack emotional empathy. Now I'm just going to pause it right here for 1 second, because I kind of feel like I want to dive into some of the points that HG had shared, which is the classification system he has for people. So according to him, people are going to fall into one of 4 categories. There's a normal or a regular. There's somebody that has narcissistic qualities. There's somebody that is a full-blown narcissist, and then there's an empath. So let's talk a little bit about that. So a normal is somebody that has a combination of narcissistic and empathic qualities, but they have them in equal amounts. And yes, so here's the thing. Everybody is going to have some amount of narcissistic qualities. And it turns out, or so they say, that we actually need some narcissistic qualities, and they're essential to part of our development. It's kind of almost like a defense system that we have between ourselves and the world. So again, the normal or the regular has both narcissistic and empathic qualities, but they have them in equal amounts. Then you're going to have a person that has narcissistic qualities. Now, this is somebody that's still going to have some emotional empathy. However, the narcissistic qualities are going to be more prevalent in them. So they're going to have perhaps a more limited amount of emotional empathy for people that are outside of their immediate circle, or maybe even like outside of their direct, like friends and family. But they still have the presence of emotional empathy. Then you have the full-blown narcissist. And the full-blown narcissist has absolutely no emotional empathy. So these are the people that, for example, and for anybody that's an empath and has been in a relationship with a narcissist, you know there's a very specific kind of abuse that a narcissist will met out towards the empath in their life, and it is again because of the lack of emotional empathy that they have. So that's the person that could physically abuse their partner. It's the person that can name call, emotionally abuse, mentally abuse, financially abuse, sexually abuse. They can even abuse their own children. They can, and again, that is because there's a complete lack of emotional empathy. So all they are is the narcissism. Conversely to the narcissist, you have what is known as an empath. And the empath is a person that, again, they will have some of the narcissistic qualities. However, the presence of their emotional empathy far outweighs the presence of the narcissistic qualities. So they're really very much the counterbalance to the narcissist. And look at it this way, if you will. It's almost like I don't know if you guys have like a Carvel or an ice cream shop or like a froyo shop where they have the soft serve ice cream or froyo. It has to be the soft serve, and you'll understand why I'm getting to it. So imagine if you go into this ice cream shop and you want a swirl, a chocolate and vanilla swirl. The empath and the narcissist relationship is, if you will, the energetic perfect combination of the chocolate and vanilla. Because the presence of a narcissist in the world with an empath is an energetic balance in the world. And what I mean by that is that if there was only narcissists in the world, but there was no empaths, then there would be an overabundance of this darker, denser energy in the world, but not enough light. So the empath is an essential component in the world to keep it at a harmonious and optimum energetic balance. Again, it's the perfect blend, if you will, of a chocolate and vanilla swirl. So the narcissist coming back in this incarnation as a narcissist, it is for that soul to learn moderation of the self. So to not completely over-identify with the three-dimensional things in one incarnation, and to have the experience and the duality of coming back into another incarnation and having no soul identity whatsoever, being egoless, and for the soul to learn through those different experiences that both can cause harm. Both of those are going to lead to an accumulation of what I call energetic reverberations, or if you will, karma. And for the soul to learn and come to understand that neither extreme is good and that both can cause harm. Now, empaths. So we're going to pause with the narcissist for a moment and we're going to move on to the empaths. Empaths were shown to me as flowers. However, not just beautiful and delicate and decorative flowers that just beautify the world. But flowers are so much more than just pretty ornaments because they are also an essential component to the survival of life on Earth. Because if not for the flowers and their nectar, then we would not have the necessitation of bees creating honeycombs and creating honey. So if not for the flowers and their nectar, so if not for the empath and their empathy, there would be no sweetness in the world. So again, it's creating that harmonious balance between the darkness and the light. So it is through the existence of the flower that we have this micro industry. But here's another thing. There's so many things that can befall a flower such as wayward feet, trampling over them, or lawnmowers or weed whackers. So there's so many ways in which a flower can be destroyed or it can be unethically poached. So this is the lesson for the empath, to not only be poached and not to be trampled underfoot, but to thrive and persevere and to populate the world with sweetness, and to not allow the experience that they have had with the narcissist, to rob them of their own purpose and meaning in the world, which is sweetness. It's the counterbalance to the narcissism. So the empath will therefore come back into a particular incarnation as an empath to be reminded of their strength through the adversity of their experience with the narcissist. And it is to find their inner strength and to find their voice and to say enough. And this was shown to me as it could have been perhaps a woman that was completely shut down in a previous life, or a woman that was born into a society that did not, that kept women down, or where women didn't have equal rights. Or it could have been a woman that was from like a very impoverished woman that didn't have any opportunities. Or it even could have been a deeply religious woman who was used to being kept down, but that she wanted to have her soul, all of these women wanted to have their soul experience their expansion. And the way in which they were going to experience their expansion was through the relationship with the narcissist. And here's a way of looking at it. It was actually shown to me that the narcissist is a pair of, I know this is going to sound funny, but the narcissist is a pair of too tight shoes. And what happens when you wear a pair of too tight shoes is that it's going to constrict your foot. It can even bruise and temporarily damage your foot with maybe things like blisters. But that through the restriction of the foot in the too tight shoes, it will then cause the foot to swell. And in their swelling, the foot expands. And then it causes the expansion of the shoe as well. So if not for the constriction of the foot in the too tight shoe, the foot would not have the ability to expand and to swell and to break in the shoe. Now, I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that if you get into a relationship with a narcissist, you are going to cause them to expand, because you're not. And for any of my empaths out there that are watching this, you know, as HG said, when you know, go so. And go so stands out for get out and stay out. Go, get out, G-O, stay out, S-O. Once you know, go so. Because as an empath, the interplay with the narcissist is for our expansion. It's not for theirs. Theirs comes later on, and I'm going to get into that. But since we're talking about the empath right now, this is what I'm focusing on. The presence of the narcissist in the empath's life is for the expansion and the growth of the empath's soul. Don't stick around because you think you're going to help them expand. They're on their own journey. Their journey has included you by way of it expanding you, but they're not going to be expanded through the relationship with you, okay? Now, another way of looking at it, it was also shown to me as a form of cutting, whereby the interactions or the narcissistic abuse that the empath endures is a form of emotional and energetic cutting. And that this was a detox, or it's a form of energetic bloodletting to rid the empath of everything that they are not, so that they can become who they truly are. And another way of looking at it is think about the formation of a diamond. What is that diamond before it is a diamond? It's a rock placed under enormous pressure over a prolonged period of time, so that that rock is then transformed from a rock into a diamond. So it is therefore through the dynamic of the relationship with the narcissist that, and the pressure and the restriction and the abuse that that empath is enduring, that they are then able to transcend it and become who they are then meant to be. And I'm going to also touch upon the, depending on who the narc is in your life, what the lesson is for you to take away from it. So first of all, it was shown to me that if, for example, I said that twice, but I'm going to say it a third time. If, for example, the narcissist in your life is a family member, this is to help rid the empath of their association of the three-dimensional version of family and to get them to embrace their divine connection. So this, for example, might be a soul that has too much of a reliance on others in the form of family, that they are living in a disempowered state because of it. So this is to get them to realize that just because they came from a narcissist, and that narcissist may be called mother or father, that that person doesn't necessarily have to be their actual family, because their actual family is their soul family, and their actual family is the connection that they have to the divine. So this is to help them to become stronger and connect to the divine. And this is, it just came in. This is actually a funny example. It's going to sound really, really funny, but I'm going to go for it anyway because it just came in. So imagine, if you will, for example, somebody takes a flight, an airplane from New York to LA. And then when they get to LA, they're like, I have been reborn. I am now California. I no longer identify as a New Yorker. I am now a Californian. And because it was the airplane, again, it's going to sound funny, but because an airplane took them from New York to California, they identify the airplane as being their parent because they came from that airplane into the new version of themselves. So it's kind of like the same thing where the empath that is born into the family of narcissists will over-identify themselves with their birth family instead of building their own self-reliance in connection to the divine, because the divine is the actual family that they need to connect to. Now, if the narcissist in your life is perhaps of a romantic nature, or was of a romantic nature, this is to help the empath to rid them of their reliance on another person, and to provide them with the strength that they need to rely only on themselves. So this is where I am no longer abdicating my sense of self and my sense of responsibility and my sense of autonomy onto a partner. There's a lot of people that are like, I don't know, I can't make a decision. I have to talk to my husband first. And I'm not suggesting that everybody that says that is a narcissist, or that they're an empath in a relationship with a narcissist, but that is a person that perhaps is overly identifying with the partner in their life and abdicating their sense of self to them. And with the dynamic of an empath and a narcissist, that is very much what happens, even if the dynamic doesn't start off that way. So, there's this terminology, it's kind of buzzy, it's going around right now, which is this idea of, what's it called? Me and names, me and titles, right? Codependence. Not every empath is a codependent, and not every narcissist is a codependent either. Sometimes they are, but even if they're not to begin with, what will actually end up happening is through the narcissistic abuse, the empath will turn into a codependent. And that is because, again, there is the lack of emotional empathy. And what will tend to happen in that case is you will see the abuse. This is what HG had spoken about, where you have the devaluation period. And the devaluation period can take any number of different expressions. It can be, first of all, physical abuse. It can be mental abuse, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse. It can be the decay of the empath's sense of self and self-identity. It can be where the person is disconnected from all of their friends and family, and all they can do and all they can have and all they can rely on is the narcissist in their life. So that will erode the identity and the self-expression that the empath had going into the relationship, where they will become overly reliant on the narcissist. And this is kind of like the way I liken it, which is the dynamic between a narcissist and an empath is one in which a narcissist has spotted the most beautiful butterfly, and it wants to own the butterfly. But here's the thing, it wants to own it, and it's also threatened by the beauty of the butterfly, but it's so mesmerized by it that it can't leave the butterfly well enough alone. So what it will do is it will create a series of micro cuts into the wings of the butterfly, so that way the butterfly can no longer fly. And that butterfly is completely reliant on the person that actually created the micro tears in its wings for its survival. But then what will also happen is, now that this person that has created the micro tears and owns this beautiful butterfly, what they'll do is they'll now look at that butterfly and they'll say, "What's wrong with you? You're broken. You're not functioning. You're supposed to fly. You're not even flying." It's so psychological. But once we understand that the spiritual component, or but the behind the veil component of it, is that this was it could be an agreed upon relationship for these people to work through so that their souls can evolve. Certainly, it's for the evolution and the expansion of the empath through the relationship with the narcissist. Imagine, if you will, the relationship between the narcissist and the empath is one in which there are two people, there are two actors playing a role. And they come onto the stage as playing these characters in a play. But then once they get off the stage, there's no connection to them any longer. Look at it the same way. When we come into our incarnations as the empath and the narcissist, it's as if there are these two people that are playing roles. One person has the role of narcissist and one person has the role of empath. But then once they die and their soul goes on, they're no longer the identification of those roles they played. Other than, another way of looking at it would be, the roles they played was to give them more experience with their acting ability. So coming into the incarnation to have these experiences is what is giving us the experience to grow and expand. On a soul level though, not like on an acting level. Now, the last example that I have is, let's say the narcissist in your life is a work colleague. And this is to help the empath understand balance, or to create balance where they are lacking balance. Let's say they're working with a narcissist, and then every conversation that they're having with their friends and family when they're not in work is about that narcissist. They are lacking a sense of balance and harmony in their life, where they are thrown into a state of imbalance where their work life is now bleeding into their personal life. So this is for them to learn to create better boundaries. Now, as I had said before, that this is the presence of the narcissist in the empath's life is to facilitate in the expansion and the growth of the empath through their interactions, through the tremendous amount of pressure placed on them, so that they shed their outer layer of a rock and they become who they truly are on the inside, which is the diamond. However, that is not the case for the narcissist. Because what was shown to me for the narcissist is that they will not necessarily change or expand through the relationship that they have with the empath. And it's going to sound horrible, but look at it this way. Imagine there's somebody walking on a gravel road and there's rocks in their way and they're just haphazardly kicking the rocks out of their way so they can keep going. That's kind of what it's like for the narcissist. They are just haphazardly kicking these rocks out of the way so that they can keep moving on their path. And on a soul level, it's kind of like that as well. Where on a soul level, they may need to come back many different times into many different incarnations as many different narcissists in many different configurations. So in one life, they might be a narcissist in a romantic relationship. Here's the thing. Also, I want to just clarify something. That can actually sound a little confusing. The narcissist is still a narcissist, whether they are having the narcissistic abuse with a romantic partner or not. So you can have a narcissist in a family and they can be meting out narcissistic abuse to their family members, and it can show up that way, and it can show up in romantic relationships as well. There's probably going to be like one favored person that they're going to end up abusing though. And it might be, as you know, HG had said, it's like their intimate, what does he call it? Primary intimate source. So that is where they have now disconnected on some fundamental level from their family, and they now have their preferred method of fuel, as he would call it, and that is from their romantic partner. So it's not, I think I just kind of like maybe muddled it up and made it a little bit confusing there. Whether or not, the narcissist doesn't stop being a narcissist from their family, being the narcissist in their family, if they are being a narcissist in a romantic relationship. So again, look at it this way. They're walking down the street, there's a bunch of rocks, they're just kicking all the rocks out of the way so they can keep going on their merry way. So one of those rocks could be their birth family, one of those rocks could be their intimate partner. It can be any number of configurations. But they may potentially have to come back on a number of occasions being a narcissist, depending on, if you will, the strong level of attachment that they had in their previous incarnations to the three-dimensional, to the matrix, to the over-identification of the self and the ego, that they're going to come back on a number of incarnations now as a narcissist and egoless. So they are not necessarily going to be refined and to learn through their subsequent incarnations as a narcissist. They're not going to learn through their interactions with the empath in their life. What will end up happening is, though, that through their interactions and through their creation of karma and energetic reverberations, they will then have to come back repeatedly to make amends for what they have done. And the purpose in all of that, it's not just to make them keep coming back so they can hurt more people, no. It's first of all so that in each incarnation that they come back as the narcissist, what will happen is they always have a choice. Free will reigns supreme. So they can come back and they can be completely in denial of their true self. They're only believing in the facade. Their true identity has died off. They're a raging narcissist and they're a fucking nightmare. They're a malignant narcissist. They're just causing chaos and devastation and destruction left, right, and center. But maybe in the next incarnation they come back, and then this is a soul that is not only living in the shadow of the true self, but it's somebody that perhaps has some level of awareness, where they're looking around and they're like, maybe they're not quite there yet, but they're looking around and they're like, well, hell, if I'm estranged from my family, all of my romantic partners leave me, people at work can't fucking stand me, if all these people are abandoning me, maybe they're not really the problem, maybe it's me. So they are given the choice to come back subsequently so that their soul can wake up. Maybe they're even going to come back in a future lifetime as somebody as an HG, where they are completely self-aware. And where they now, because they have this level of awareness, can make amends for all of the devastation, chaos, and destruction that they have caused leading up to it by now sharing that information with empaths and helping illuminate to these empaths what have been going on in their life, what have they been enduring, and to help them move forward and move on. So it's where they might have to have these multiple incarnations, so that with every incarnation that happens, there's maybe some more level of awareness on their part. They're always given the choice for the level of awareness that they want to have at any particular incarnation. Now, maybe they have some karmic retribution that they have to work out with other people, and they're coming back in a particular configuration of family members or romantic partnerships, but that is where they are working through the karma that they have accumulated in previous lifetimes. Or it can be, like I had said before, two actors just playing roles. Maybe they haven't had anything to do with each other before, but they have come into their role, one playing the narcissist, one playing the empath, so that they can get stronger through the experience that they have together. But the strength that they acquire is, again, not of the acting kind, it's of the soul kind. So there's so many different configurations in the way that the narcissist and the empath actually interplay with one another. But I want to end this video with the recognition of the fact that, first of all, if you are an empath, and if you've made it this far and you're still watching, and you've had that experience with the narcissist in your life, that, again, understanding that on a soul level, that was a form of detoxification. That in this incarnation, as the empath, you were able to detox some of the things that you were not, to fully embrace and become who you are. The flower. The beautification that we bring to the world through our sweetness. And that we're essential in the balance of the world because of it. So I hope that this information has on some level brought you some level of comfort in the acknowledgement of the fact that we are not and never have been hapless victims in the relationships that we have. They're either soul contracts that we have agreed to come into and to work through so that we can move on from these experiences, or it's so that we can have the experience and then grow from those experiences. But either way, as an empath, your interaction with the narcissist is for the betterment and the good of your soul. Even if it didn't feel that way when you were in the relationship. But looking back from the other side, looking back, you can see how you were living in a disempowered state, being in that relationship, and the strength and resilience and the character that you have now. And in the acknowledgement that perhaps if not for the pressure that was placed upon you, you would not now be the diamond that you are. And this is also not to say, however, that we're giving a pass to the narcissist, right? I never give a pass. These videos are always about some level of accountability, either on a soul level or on a three-dimensional level. And in not giving the narcissist the past, it's to say that they are working through their own particular karma, their own particular accumulation of energetic reverberations, so that they can grow to be the version of themselves that they are also meant to be as well. Now, it may take very, very many multiple lifetimes, but with every lifetime that they come back as a narcissist, they are given the choice again. Do they want to live in a disempowered state of narcissistic victimhood, or do they want to grow and expand? And if they continue to repeat in every incarnation, and they do not want to grow and they do not want to evolve, it's just going to take more lifetimes for them to eventually ascend past those life lessons. And I know that there's a lot of empaths that want to almost like see the narcissist get theirs, right? Like, I cut them out of my life. I no longer have anything to do with them, but I just wish I knew that they were getting theirs. Go back and listen to what I had just said. They're getting theirs. They're going to have to come back and repeat these incarnations as a narcissist over and over and over again, every single time, until they make a different choice on a soul level, where they are not going to be the disempowered, narcissistic version of themselves, where they are abdicating their true sense of self, their true soul identity for the facade. And only at that time, when that starts to happen, can they start to evolve, and can they break out of their own loop and their own reincarnation cycle. So as always, guys, I hope that you have found this video to be interesting and informative, maybe thought-provoking. And as I always say in every single video, stay in the high vibration.